Okay, so this is Sealander number 3, and we're talking about Animal Farm. And Tristan, I think you read this book twice.
I did. I read it twice because the first time I read it a little too quickly, so I decided to read it again to make sure I got everything. And I found it an immensely satisfying read. I learned quite a bit about communism. This book really has a lot of communistic things in it, and
So what's the story about?
so it starts with animals being annoyed with their life because they say their rations are low. And Major, an old pig in here, says really stirs up the animals, and so they start, after he dies, they start a group that promotes aminalism, meaning they want to overthrow men. So they go on, and eventually, one day when they're not fed enough, they break out and eat at the grain bins. And so the master of the farm, Mr. Jones, the farm's name is Manor Farm, and his men come and they whip the animals, so the animals drive them away, mad because they hadn't eaten, and then here Jones' men were belaboring them. So they overthrow them and chase them away.
Is that chapter 1?
That is the
No,
chapter
that's
one.
chapter 2.
No, that's chapter 2. Chapter 1 is when Major's stirring them up with a story.
When he inspires them?
Yep, when he inspires them, and also
What's he trying to inspire them to do?
he inspires them to overthrow men and when they do, to make sure that they don't adopt any of men's evil traits, which includes drinking, sleeping in beds, living in houses, killing other people or animals. So he says that would be forbidden.
Yep.
So he dies, and then they overthrow Jones. And so at first everything's nice. They start farming, and they do very well. They finish harvesting hay quicker than Jones and his men did. And
But that's also when they were enjoying it, the animals.
Yes, they were very much enjoying it, eating food, lots of food. And so at one point, Jones and his men come back, and they drive them away again.
The animals?
Yep, they do. They drive him and his men away. And they steal Jones's rifle, and they use it to fire off at certain days. They fire it the day that they overthrew and took the farm.
Like Independence Day or something?
Yes, like that. And they also fire it on the day that they fought the battle, and they called it the Battle of Cowshed, because it was near the cowshed. So life goes on, and two pigs start emerging as they usually hold debates over certain things in the barn.
Like leaders?
Yep, they emerge as leaders, Napoleon and Snowball. And at this point,
Did the pigs allow other animals to join the hierarchy that was making decisions? Or
well, at first,
could a chicken join?
Not really. Really, it was just the pigs being the main leaders, and then they'd just get majority vote from the other animals. And the pigs were already starting to get privileges, like they would get the milk and apples. And Squealer, a pig who was kind of fat, he would convince the animals in a very convincing way. He said, "My comrades, we only eat milk and apples because it's good for us. Science proves that we would be very unhealthy without it."
So he was convincing the other animals to
let them have all the milk and most of the apples. So they went all to the pigs.
But when I seem to remember where the pigs were talking about, or Major or somebody, that if the cows were allowed to have their milk, then they could have more calves, right? And yet now they're taking the milk.
Yes.
And the calves, whatever happened to that?
Major was saying that the calves could have milk, and they'd be able to raise calves. And he said the chickens would also get to raise more hens.
Did that all happen?
No, because starting with the milk, all the milk went to the pigs, every single bit of it, because as Squealer said, they needed it, and even though Squealer said he didn't like milk and apples.
But he still drank milk and ate apples?
Yes, he did. So
that's pretty noble of him to do something he didn't apparently like to do.
No, Squealer, as it turns out, is quite a figure and really quite a liar, I find. So they go on, and eventually Snowball, which is one of the leaders, gets chased away by Napoleon because Napoleon has 9 pups that he raised to big dogs, and they chase him away.
So he's got like his own boot squad.
He does, and he takes full command and says from now on there will be no more majority debate votes.
Uh-oh.
It'll all
no
be
more voting?
Nope, it'll be decided by a special committee of pigs. So time goes on a little more, and suddenly the pigs start moving into the house, and the animals are
But I thought they were not supposed to live in the house.
They weren't, but the animals, the pigs say that reassure them, especially Squealer, that nothing had ever been passed like that it wouldn't be evil, and they also
So as time went on, they
began taking more rights.
Okay.
So, and Squealer was saying how they needed it because they were the brains of the farm. They needed to live in something better than a stall. And so they start sleeping.
Weren't all animals are equal or something like that?
It does say that. It says that all animals are to be equal. That's in the first chapter when, what's his name?
Let's find the 7 commandments here.
Yep. There's 5, I think.
All animals are equal. Number 7.
Oh, there's 7.
Yeah,
yep,
the 7 commandments.
All animals are equal.
But they're living in the house while the rest of the animals are living in the barn. So that sounds pretty equal.
It's not equal. And so, really, they use Squealer very well. He keeps convincing them, saying, but we need to have this because we are the brains of the farm. We have so much hard work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so they all do work.
Okay. And what happens after they run off? Snowball and Napoleon takes a charge with his 7 or 9 dogs.
9.
9 dogs.
9 dogs. Well, they start to build a windmill, which the animals were wondering why, because earlier Napoleon had been Napoleon and Snowball were arguing over building a windmill, and Snowball wanted to because he told the animals that they could have all the luxuries of a house with running hot water and
So he
heaters.
was trying to make it easier for them.
Yep, he wanted.
So they didn't just have to labor.
Yep, and Napoleon went against it. So he started saying, "Okay, let's build the windmill," and the animals were confused. And Squealer came up and said, it was really Napoleon all along who had wanted to make the windmill. Napoleon's papers had this plan for the windmill, but Snowball had secretly stolen them. And so I asked, well, why did he discourage the windmill in the first place? And then it says Squealer looked sly and said it was all tactics to get rid of Snowball by seemingly discouraging the thought of a windmill. He got rid of Snowball and now can build it. And I didn't like the part where it said he looked sly, and that started making me think, well, he's not really.
But Squealer is Napoleon's kind of mouthpiece, right? Because Napoleon doesn't do much talking.
No,
if he doesn't like what you do, he just kind of puts his dogs on you. And
that does happen too. Eventually, after the windmill, animals start confessing, oh, we did this because Snowball told us, or Snowball appeared in a dream to us, so he just has his dogs kill them.
Yeah, but in here it says they can't kill an animal. No animal shall kill another animal.
That's the thing, though. The animals start looking to the commandments again, but what they find is that they're forgetting words. They're forgetting that...
Are the animals forgetting words? Or?
Well, they think they are, and that's what Squealer says. But really, the commandment said, you shall not kill any animals. But at the end, there's 2 words that said without reason.
Okay. Same with alcohol, right? What happens there?
Right there, the pigs start to drink alcohol, and the animals are wondering why. Well, they also find that it says without reason. And at one point, they hear a crash in the middle of the night and find Squealer with upset paint on the ground, a broken in half ladder, and the dogs of Napoleon come out and they just herd him inside. And the next day they find those words, no animal may drink alcohol to excess.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually the pigs just start getting more rights, all the pigs, no matter what kind of division are allowed to wear a green ribbon on their tail. Pigs,
But I thought they weren't supposed to wear clothes or something.
nope, they could not wear
Because
clothes
that
either.
was a sign of the human enslavement that they had been under, remember?
Yeah, but pigs were special. They were the brains of the farm, according to the pigs only. So they start wearing
So
ribbons.
did they work hard too? Because, like, I'm sure the animals, all the other animals, they worked in the winter time working on that windmill. Were the pigs out there working too?
No,
The pigs weren't?
no, they just
Oh.
stood and watched and told the animals what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, some of the animals started dying. One of them was Boxer, the hardest worker on the farm, and he.
Can you tell me about what happened to Boxer?
Well, Boxer was working too much and just wanted to see the windmill through.
That's right, because he always said Napoleon is...
His maxims or his mottos were, "I will work harder, and Napoleon is always right." And so
Sounds like a loyal...
he was loyal, poor fellow. He was, well, like in the story, I'd feel sorry if he were real because he was sorely tricked.
Mm-hmm. Boxer, yeah.
yeah.
But I'm sure there are people like that. They're
Yeah.
boxers, right? They just kind of...
Amazing strength and ability, but no brain.
Not necessarily strength, too. I'm just saying they
Yeah.
no brain. They just kind of do whatever without even questioning, like if it makes sense or not.
Yeah, he did that.
And so did Boxer get to retire? What happened? Because
So-
wasn't there the retirement age like 12?
It was 12.
And he was getting on to his 12th birthday, so that means he gets to retire in the
Yes,
in
he
the
did.
corner pasture.
Yep, that was the retirement age. He was going to do that. But before he turned 12, he was working so hard, and the animals, especially Clover, another horse, and Benjamin, a donkey, were telling him, "You need to stop it. You need to slow down a bit." But he kept working harder, so one day he fell over, couldn't get up, and was bleeding. So they called...
But the vet got him, right? Didn't the vet come take care of him?
Well, Squealer came out and expressed that Napoleon was very sorry that he was hurt and that in 2 or 3 days' time he'd be sent to a doctor. So for those 3 days, he was given a bottle of pink medicine, which they gave it to him each day. And then the vet came, and the animals were all saying, "Goodbye, Boxer, goodbye." And Benjamin, who could read the best, was like, "Fools, can't you see? It says it's the knacker," because it said Johnson's horse slaughter and glue boiler and etc.
Mm-hmm.
So the animals tried to get him out, but they were too slow, and he tried to push out, but he was too weak, couldn't smash through the door, and so he got carried away. And Squealer came the next day and said, "Oh, Boxer is dead." And he died in the hospital, and I was by his side at his last, and he said, "Onward, comrades, onward, Napoleon is always right." And then he looked around all the animals and said, "I hear that you are spreading false rumors about..."
The knacker.
Yep, the knacker. And he said, "But it's quite simple. The vet bought the buggy or the carriage from the knacker, and he forgot to paint it out. He didn't have time." And so all the animals believed it, although I don't think Benjamin did. So they all believed it. And
But
then,
wasn't that night there like a big party? Because
There was.
they somehow found enough money to buy themselves a keg of something?
yes, they did. They found enough money to buy themselves a keg of whiskey. The pigs. So that
And
tells...
this was right when he died too, right after he died.
So that tells me, anyway, that really he was sent to the knacker, and the knacker paid them for giving him to them, and they used it to buy
And
whiskey.
then the pigs lied.
Yeah. So the years go on more. All the animals get older, and it says that eventually...
Do they get to retire in the pasture?
No, it says that eventually the retirement age was forgotten.
Oh,
Clover, who was old and could barely see, was still working. And Benjamin was still alive, and he was kind of
so
grouchy.
that's kind of like, can you see parallels between that and today? Like with people?
I can. I know that lately the retirement age has been getting, or like general retirement age, people when they can retire after getting enough money to live for the rest of their life. I know it's gone up from about 50 to 65 in the U.S.
Yeah, it's like 65 to 67. But here, this is a new article that just came out of China, where they're raising it from 60 to 63
Oh.
for if you're a male, and then up to 58 if you're a female, from 50.
Yeah, because nowadays.
So that kind of sounds like Animal Farm, where they just keep raising the
Yep.
retirement. And
Yeah. Eventually, at the very, very end of the book, it's where you finally see what the pigs planned all along. Squealer takes the sheep out to a pasture and he teaches them for days and days, teaching them something. And the sheep had always been happy. And
so who do the sheep remind you of?
they remind me of the fools in the world who just go along with everything because they think the people who are really the bad influences in the world, they just trust them.
It also could be like the news too, though. A lot of times the news says the same thing.
Yeah, like that. Because the sheep, whenever animals would grumble or whatever about having less food because they were starting to have less food, and Squealer never called it less food. He never called it reduction. He called it readjustment of food.
That sounds better.
It does sound better.
It's almost like, yeah. Did the pigs get slimmer too? Did they lose weight?
Nope, the pigs and the dogs gained weight. Squealer was so fat he could barely see out of his eyes. While the other animals...
But the people the animals got skinny.
They got skinny and were hungry, and they couldn't even remember what it was like with Jones. Although Squealer said food was going up 500%, 300%, 200%.
Those are good numbers.
They're good numbers, but
yeah, because they were
trusted.
producing, right? It was the best year ever, but they still had the least amount of food.
Yeah.
And then what happened in the end?
So back to the sheep. The sheep had always been singing 4 legs too good, 2 legs bad. So Squealer took them off and for a few days taught them something. And then one evening when the sheep were coming back, they saw Squealer walking on 2 legs. And all the other pigs came out walking on 2 legs. And the animals were terrified, wondering how could this be, because they knew that 2 legs were bad. Well, then the sheep right away started shouting, 4 legs good, 2 legs better.
Oh.
4 legs good, 2 legs better. So, and Napoleon was carrying a whip in his trotter too.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say is I remember the pigs get to have whips.
They get
while the animals are working.
Yep. So the animals, after seeing that, there was no surprise to them when they saw the pigs
So they
watching
were just
them.
Obedient and.
Yep, the pigs watching them started carrying whips. Napoleon and the other pigs started wearing clothes. Napoleon smoked on a pipe. And so they were just becoming humans more and more by the day, subscribing to magazines. And finally, one evening, a party was going on in the house because the pigs invited some of the neighboring farms. And the neighboring farms had toured the farm, and the animals were kind of scared. So while they were talking, were playing cards, they decided to have a toast. And one of the farmers stood up and said, "Gentlemen, I want you all to know that I am sorry for all the troubles we've had between Animal Farm and our farms. I want to say that that's all coming to an end because earlier they had been having troubles and invasions." So he said they all gone and looked at the farm, and what had they seen? They had seen modern, up-to-date machinery, and not only that, but the animals on Animal Farm, not only were they working the hardest and the longest compared to any other farm in the country, they were receiving the least amount of food compared to any other farm in the country. They were receiving less food and more work.
But the animals were told that it was better than it was before.
It was worse than Jones.
Wow.
So,
and at that point, it's already too late. They got tricked.
They got tricked, and then he toasted the Animal Farm.
They got tricked and worked to death.
They did. And then they toasted the Animal Farm, and then Napoleon said, "Well, thank you, but I want to add one thing. This is no longer going to be Animal Farm. I'm going to name it once more Manor Farm, because that is the proper name for it." And so then he said that he would abolish the animals calling each other comrade.
Oh.
And eventually, I forgot to mention one thing. Before this, the animals saw on the barn, all the commandments were gone, and it said all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
I like that. They condensed it. You just have to remember one commandment, not the 7 anymore.
It'd be better to remember multiple than go get tricked into dictatorship like the animals did. And so at the end of the story ends, It ends with the animals hearing an uproar and looking in the window again, and they look from pigs to men and men to pigs, but they're looking and they can't tell who is who. So basically, the pigs have become men and dictators.
So basically, this was written in almost 80 years ago.
Yeah, and it's a really great story. I think it's excellent work, and I think other kids and adults alike should read it.
You think it's an entertainment book, or more like a book that kind of points things out and hypocrisy and?
Well, it's more pointing out communism, hypocrisy, and things like that. But George Orwell has a really good way of using animals. So he not only makes it interesting, he uses the animals to create an artistic point of view, and at the same time deliver his message.
Mm-hmm. So it's entertaining.
Entertaining, but also really a good lesson. I think it's a really good book, and it's the easiest one to read I've ever done. The other two books I've done were a little harder.
Okay.
So I think kids 10 and up could read this.
10 and up?
Well, perhaps 12 and up. 10 and up might have trouble, but I think 12 and up could read it and not have too much trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they might actually learn quite a bit from it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tristan.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll find another book.